Welcome everybody. My name is Peter Dostal and you are listening podcast about architecture called How I Met My Architect. I usually do this podcast in Slovak language, but this is a very special episode. It's episode number 50, so it's a small anniversary and I wanted to bring a very special episode for you. I traveled to Sweden and now I'm sitting in a very nice and cozy Stockholm apartment. So today we are going to talk about architecture photography, and I'm very happy that the invitation to my first English episode accepted a very successful photographer, Mr. Åke E.son Lindman. Mr. Lindman is a photoshooting architecture for almost 40 years, and he's also collaborating with well-known architectural studio called Tam Videgard. So hi, Mr. Lindman, and let's start very smoothly.
Yes, my name is pronounced a little bit different, Åke E.son Lindman. It's an A with a circle on the top, which means Å in Swedish. And I'm an architectural photographer, and I've been a photographer for a long time. I started in the 70s in the northern part of Sweden, close to Finland. And that's where I also went to photography school and so on.
We are in your nice and cozy apartment in Stockholm. So it's really common to start with beginning. So let me ask you at first, of course, how did you become a photographer? But mostly, why did you choose architecture?
I didn't choose architecture at first. It took some time. I was fascinated with of photography, since the first time I came into a darkroom and heard the sound of running water and the red light, and everything was very mystic. And I was like 15 years old and came into the school, the laboratory, the darkroom of the school. And that's where I decided to be a photographer. I started as a press photographer, how do you say, a newspaper photographer in Luleå, the town where I came from. And but I left that and moved to Stockholm. And in 1986, I had my first architectural work, which then also was overwhelming. And I said to myself, this is what I should do. This is what I will be the best. And since then, I've been shooting architecture.
And since then, you photoshooted a lot of stuff all around the world.
All around the world.
Yes. Yeah. You told me that you made a lot of pictures of Swedish embassies all around the world, for example.
That's one job I had from the National Swedish Property Board to photograph all the embassies made by Swedish architects. So in 1 year I traveled around shooting Swedish embassies around the world.
And would you give us some suggestions? Yeah. Where are the best photogenic Swedish embassies all around the world?
Oh, that's difficult. I think we have some nice buildings in New Delhi, in India. Actually, very nice. And also in Berlin. And I haven't been to Slovakia. I don't think we have a new building made by Swedish architects. I think we rent some house there. I'm not sure about that. But also in Brasilia was one of the best interesting buildings, Swedish buildings, but also to see all the Oscar Niemeyer architecture around the city.
You said that you have met Oscar Niemeyer.
Yes.
So when he was
94.
94. So,
and still working strong.
Yeah. So tell us something about him.
I was there with a journalist who wrote the stories about the Swedish embassies in Brasilia. But then we went to Rio de Janeiro and we visited the Oscar Niemeyer office. So we knocked on the door to his office, no one opening. So we knocked harder, and at last we opened the door and around the corner and went in. And around the corner, a short man came. That was Oscar Niemeyer, and it was like Saturday. And he worked, he said, every day from 9 to 9. At that time, he was 94. So we sat with him for 2-3 hours, and then he made some drawings for us.
You made a lot of pictures or a lot of photos for Swedish studio Tam and Videgaard, which is a really good architecture studio. They are also on a El Croquis cover, like the only Swedish office. So how is the collaboration with them?
You can say very good, the collaboration. I've been working for them since they were on. Now they are like 30 people at the office. But when I started working with them, it was like the owners, Åke Tam and Martin Videgaard. So that was really in the beginning. And I shot all their different projects during years.
So we have a really smooth start behind us. And when we are talking about, for example, Tam and Videgaard or this type of an architects, let's talk something about your process of the photo shooting. Mm-hmm. When you are, for example, working with those good architects, what is the beginning when you start to photo shoot?
It's different for different architects. Some are not really interested in to be together with during the shooting, and some are very interested to be there during the shoot. Often we try to find a nice light, and that's for me is like a blue sky with small clouds. So you have to study the light before, and you have to work together with the light. I mean, move-ins. Maybe you need to photograph the exterior, but you have to take some interior during a certain time of the day, and they have to round out again and take another part of the facade because the light is coming on the back or facade. So it's a lot of thinking before how you move around the building. That's what we do. And then we leave the place, and then starts the post-production, which takes some days. And then I send the digital contact sheets.
And are they describing their vision for you also, or they could let it to you? I mean that, okay, bring us your vision and make the building like nice, not nicer, but move it forward a little bit, those pictures. Because some architects are like that they strictly tell you the positions that I would like to catch this and that, and they don't give you that much space. So that's why am I asking.
Some architects are like that, but most of them I work with give me freedom. That's what they want from me, I think.
Could you compare it, pros and cons, between analog photography and digital photography?
Working with those analog cameras was very difficult, but also very attractive, because if I worked the whole day with those analog cameras, I could come back home with like 20 different images. Nowadays, I come home with 50 or hundreds different images, shooting with those small digital cameras. But the technique is very good, so I'm not disappointed. It's really easy to travel, easy to work, and the post-production is also easy, even though I don't do so much my own post-production. Normally I have assistants. Nowadays I work with my wife a lot. She does all the post-production things for me. Lena, my wife, she started working with my economy, and now she's my best friend and lover, and so it's nice. So we travel a lot together also, and she's also my assistant during the photo shoots.
There is another big topic, and that's people on those pictures. When I go through your pictures, there is a lot of pictures without people. So you are photoshooting only architecture. And why are those pictures empty in terms of people?
Because of many reasons. But one thing is I don't. I mean, sometimes I have people in the pictures. Quite often, I think. But that's more as a model for scale in the architecture. But also when I started photographing architecture, it's you have these large format cameras with lenses that you needed the aperture 22, which means it's a very small opening for exposure, which means a long exposure time. And if you have a long exposure time, like 4 or 5 seconds, people who are in the picture move, you don't see them. They are like ghosts going through. That's one reason. And it's but also I was very much like into classical architectural photography. That's without people in there. But also because I like the feeling of timeless. I was also always attracted by pictures of the pyramids or something. No people, timeless, could be taken for 5,000 years ago or yesterday. That's what I like also in modern art, modern architectural photography.
Does it mean that with people, those pictures are not timeless?
If you look at pictures with people or cars, they are directly time-telling. If you look at Gunnar Asplund architecture from iconic pictures, you see the cars from that time. That's interesting. But if you see new images of new architecture, you can look at the clothes and you can directly see this is from the 70s, this is from the 90s, looking at people's styles. I can like that too. It's okay. But sometimes I want these timeless pictures.
Sometimes when you want the human scale there, which is also sometimes very important, you have to accept it, right?
Yeah. Of course. And I do that a lot. Sometimes when you work with the exterior, that's something you have to accept.
And when you showed me your book, there is a lot of pictures of architecture which are black and white pictures. Do you have also the strict opinion about the picture of architecture should be black and white?
I think color can distract you during looking at architecture. For me, it was very important that non-color should be through the whole book the same, so you can concentrate on pure architecture.
You photoshooted a lot of architectural projects. When you look through to your memories, do you have some buildings that the architecture was so strong and it influenced you somehow?
Yes, I think I have many buildings like that. But one of the first was when I was young and started my architectural career. So then I wanted to have a nice portfolio of pictures of architecture so I can show to architects, this is what I can do, look at this. So I asked the architects, who should I visit, who should I photograph, who is a really good architect, what do you think? And many of these architects in the 80s said to me, go to Italy and see Carlo Scarpa buildings. So I went there, and through the years I shot a lot of his buildings and interiors and houses. So he influenced me a lot. Also, he learned me in a way, without meeting him, how I should approach a building and where to stand. It was like he led me to, you can stand here, you can stand here. And there was a very nice feeling to visit his buildings.
For how many years are you photoshooting architecture?
40 years.
40. What about your motivation during those years? Because let me ask you, what kind of motivation moves you forward? During all of those years, you are still bringing something new in this topic of architecture.
Yes, I ask myself this question. It's difficult to say, but and every new building is like...
Yes, because sometimes you could have a feeling that you are a little bit repeating yourself.
That's, yes, I struggle with that. Of course, it's not like you have exceptional, fantastic architecture in front of you every day. For me, it's one of the inspiration is to make a good thing, even if you have a modest building in front of you. That's something who inspired me to do a little better than the reality. Some days you have a very interesting and good-looking architecture, and that's no problem too. But to make good photographs of bad architecture, that's difficult. I don't say this to architects, but this is what I mean. It's a reality.
When you think deeply, do you have some advices for photographers who are struggling with those kind of stereotype, as I told you before? That what they should do, how they should step out from those stereotypes?
That's difficult to answer, but if you have the same feeling that I have, that every day is new and you should do your best, you should work in the way as you have the best architecture in front, even if you don't have it.
And with your life experience, do you have also some advices for young photographers of architecture? What they should do and maybe what they should avoid, for example?
Many of these young architects I know they are very good, I think. So, and
photographers, right?
yes, because they also have the technique in their blood, I think, the digital blood and the digital technique with drones. And for me, a real photographer is someone who's started in the darkroom. But the young photographers have a totally different start point. You know, there are so many young photographers coming from the real estate, and they're trying to be architectural photographers. And they work with the wrong technique, I think, and also approach to the building's interior. But the competition is very hard, I think. Also, the fees for photographers are going. I think if you come from real estate photography, it's really bad situation for those photographers.
So what do you mean that the real estate photographers, they are paid
very low?
Very low.
Here in Sweden, they pay very little for a salary for. They have to have their own car. They have to have their own camera. Then they must maybe shoot 2-3 flats in one day, and then they get paid very low. And then they leave the raw files, and they will be sent to India or Vietnam or something, and come back next day with, desaturated with white walls and blue sky outside, even if it was raining. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't like to be a photographer working in those circumstances. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not any respect for the architectural photography. That's what it is.
We are getting close to the end of the episode, so let's move to the rubric at the end, which waits for each guest. Yeah. So the question number 1 is, what is your favorite failure? Let me describe the question for you. That's something bad what happens to you. I mean, the failure maybe in terms of work, but it ended up with something positive. Think about it.
The first thing I thinking about is working in the darkroom, and when you are disappointed with a print because maybe it's the light was exposure on the print was bad or something, you throw it in the rubbish and you leave it there and start doing something else. And when you turn on the light after 1 hour or something, and you look down and you see something very interesting happening, and you save the print, and maybe you have to wash it and print and dry it and so on, and you have a wonderful print because something has happened without your control. That's something who can end up very nice, but starts very bad.
Okay, let's move on. What is your worst personal feature?
Maybe I'm lazy and not maybe in working, but doing other things, training, practicing. I should do that a lot more.
Okay. What is your best personal feature?
While working, I'm not lazy.
So you are a little bit workaholic, or
workaholic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that is my best feature, but it's one of the good.
Okay.
I think I can work hard. And if you want to be something in architecture or in photography, you have to work hard. You have to be a little workaholic. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go a step further all the time.
Flat or house?
Now flat.
Why?
Easier. I'm getting old. We lived in a house, 3 levels house, and stairwells. And my knee is getting bad because an old basketball injury. So right now, flat is my answer.
What is the most favorite food?
It's like Italian food.
Italian in general?
Yes.
And don't you have one dish
Yeah,
which you
I could
prefer?
say the one we ate today is one of my favorite. It's pasta pesto.
The next question is about candies, which you already tried from Slovakia. It's a kávenky and cacao verezi. Which one, kávenky or cacao verezi, would you prefer?
I would prefer kávenky.
Why?
First of all, because I read the text and it said it's including the taste of coffee beans, and coffee is one of my favorite. But then I tasted the kávenky, and it was more not like an espresso taste, but more like a cappuccino taste. And that's very okay for me. That's something I like. But I think the cacao was good also. But my winner is the kávenky.
The last question is connected with the fashion. I'm sure that you have noticed that architects, they really like to wear black clothes. And it's really signature clothes for them. Why do you think that architects wear black?
For me, it's not only architects. It's all about fashion people, interested people wear black. And it looks nicer. It's more graphic. One thing is I look slimmer.
Okay. So, because someone says in a black, everybody looks good, for example, or something like that. Or you don't want to think about it.
But it's like a car, you know. A black car is always nice.
Okay, Mr. Lindman, we are at the end of this podcast, and actually the first English episode of this podcast about architecture. It's episode number 50. So we will see how it will work, and I hope we will continue with recording English episodes. But let me thank you very much for accepting an invitation, and that you told us something about you and your approach to architectural photography.
Thank you for letting me be in this podcast. It was very nice, and I hope you can see some nice architecture in Stockholm.
Great.
Bye.